Hi everybody, I just wanted to show you what we talked about in After Effects and go through it a little bit. So let's go ahead and start from the beginning. I'm going to do a new project and it should say new composition, so I'll click that. Up here, this is our little dialog box just giving us the initial settings. I'm going to type in first name, last name, week. We'll say week 2 since we're actually on week 2. And let's call this Kaleidoscope animation. Below that, here's this preset setting. We want 1920 by 1080, 24 frames per second. That should be default. Below that, down here where it says duration, let's make sure this is set to 0.5 and 0.0. So your box should look just like mine, and we'll click OK. All right, and here, this is our work area. I'm going to click default and reset saved layout, and that'll put it so that you have exactly the same screen as mine. It should arrange any boxes, take away anything that's extra. All right, so let's start with these tools up here. The main ones that we're going to be using, this is our move tool. The key command for that is V. You see that little V pop up come out. The hand tool, it's H, but also if you use spacebar, that's going to let you pan around as well. This is our zoom. You can zoom in like this. You can also hold Control or Command if you're on a Mac to zoom out with the scroll wheel. And then down here you also have some tools for zoom, so you might say fit up to 100%. And then a little ways over, we have the rotate tool. That's going to be W. So let's say we have a shape in here. Let's do a star. And let me set that back to default. Okay. So we have our star. You can see when I click on it that the anchor point isn't centered on it. So I need to use this pan behind tool. Otherwise, when I rotate it, it's going to rotate about that anchor point and not from the center. So I'm going to use this pan behind tool. I need to click off of it and back on sometimes. That way I can see it, and then I can move this anchor point around. We want to aim for the middle, and you can hold Control on a PC or Command on a Mac to snap it to the center like that. And now when I rotate it, it should rotate about that center point instead. All right, so next to that we have the shape tool. We already used that a little, but let's start from the beginning. I'm going to set a rectangle up here. I have my fill and my stroke. So the fill is going to give us this little dialog box. You can pick what color you want. And next to that, if you wanted an outline on your shape, you'd add a stroke. I don't want one, but if we did, we could make that thickness. We could adjust here with the pixels. So let's draw out our square. I'm going to hold Shift to make it a perfect square, a uniform square. And I can move that to the center. And again, I need to adjust my anchor point because it's way down here. So I'm going to use this pan behind tool. It's also Y as the key command. I'm going to click off and click back on so I can make sure I grab my anchor point and hold Control or Command on a Mac to snap it to the center. And then I can go back to the move tool. And you can see that that anchor point is still there. There's an Align tab down here on the bottom right. If it's not there, you can click on Window and pull up Align. And we can move our square to the center of the composition like that. Down here, if you click on your shape layer and press Enter on a PC or Return on a Mac, you can rename it. So I'm just going to call it Square. We'll call it Pink Square. All right, so now we have a few different tools down here that I want you to learn about. If you click on Transform, this is where you're going to get most of your default movements, all of your animations. We're going to start with position. I'm going to move my square over here to the left, and I'm going to turn on my position stopwatch. I have my time slider all the way at 0 right now. If I move it over, so I'll Control Z to undo or Command Z on a Mac. If I move it over and turn on that stopwatch, my keyframe shows up here instead. We can move that around, or we can make sure that we have our time slider set where it needs to be when we start. Okay, so we have that starting position. I'm going to move to 12 frames over, and you can zoom in and out on that timeline with these little mountains here, or with this up here. Okay, at 12 frames, I'm going to move it over to the right. I'm going to hold shift so that it locks it so that it's perfectly horizontal movement. And now I can hit spacebar to play that back. You also have a preview tab up here. You can play that back this way as well. If I wanted that to be faster, I need these keyframes to be closer together. You see that? And if I want it to be slower, I need them to be further apart. That's that timing and spacing. Let's talk about the graph editor. I'm going to select both of these keyframes and go into the graph editor. That's this button right here. Okay. With that graph editor, I can click on position. Let's click on those keyframes again, and it should show me my graph of the motion. Sometimes what that does is it separates it, and I'm not able to affect it because they are one value right now. So what we could do is right click on here and say separate dimensions. And sometimes that lets you edit this. So now that we're here, I can change that path. And you can take a look up here as I do that. You see how it's moving that closer. This is saying there's no change happening. So for both of these, there's no change happening. If I move this out, that says that's a lot of change happening. You're moving a lot of distance. Because it's straight, it's saying it's moving at a constant rate. If we select both of these, I'm holding shift and clicking both of these vertices, we can add some easing. So you can choose easy ease, ease in only, or ease out only. I'm going to choose easy ease. That's going to give me two little handles that pop out, and that's going to change the speed, the acceleration, the easing. So now my box is going to leave that starting position slowly, then it's going to quickly move across the screen, and then it's going to slow back down here. That's what that's saying. The higher that angle is, the faster it's moving. The less that angle is, the less it's moving. If it's completely horizontal, it's not moving at all, right? So now, when I hit play, it has a little bit more character, and we can affect that even more by messing with these handles. So we can pull this even further to the right and even further to the left. And now what should happen is it should almost not move, then really suddenly move, and then slow way back down. Do you see? And that's a huge improvement from what we had at the start, where it was just still. Okay, I made 3 new squares in here, and I've labeled them each green square, pink square, and blue square. I reset their keyframes, so right now they should move exactly evenly from left to right. I'm going to squish this bottom one down so that I'm only seeing this portion. It's only going to play that part of the animation. Okay, so now when I loop it, it's just going to repeat. So right now they're moving completely evenly. If I pull up the graph editor, they all have a very linear path, and they're all just a little bit stacked above each other. So if I move, let's leave the blue position in the state that it is. It moves linearly top to bottom in a very even manner. With the the X position on the pink square, let's add some easing to those. So I'm going to select both of those keyframes by drawing a box around it with my mouse. And I'm going to click on this Easy Ease. So this is where I haven't touched anything on it, I just added Easy Ease. On the X position for the green square, let's add Easy Ease, and then let's mess with these handles some. So I'm going to pull these to the right and left to really exaggerate that. And now let's play that back. Do you see it, how they're moving so differently now? I'm going to hide the eyeball on these, and let's just play the blue one. Very constant, very slow and steady. The pink one, it's a little bit more motivated than the blue one if I turn those both on. It takes a little bit longer for it to take off, and then it catches up and they reach that last frame at the same time. You can see where it passes that blue one there. And then let's do the same for the green one. It's going to take a lot longer for it to take off. Then around the middle it should kind of line up with the others. And then towards the end it should race to the end and slowly ease into that last spot. At this time period, they're still all in the same spot, but we changed the spacing and that affected how they move. So you can see here, each of these little dots represents a keyframe, and you can see they're perfectly evenly spaced on that blue one. Let's move this down. Here they're a little bit separated. You can see them getting closer here. They're a little bit wider here than they are over here. And here that's much exaggerated. So there's a ton of space here in the middle, and then there's a lot of little tiny points here. And that's referring to the anchor point. Where's that anchor point going to be? Okay, I've combined all of those before into a pre-composition. What I did is I selected all of these, I right-clicked, and I said pre-compose. And what that does is it makes a separate group, a second tab for whatever was inside of that. And you can copy and paste that. So if I wanted a second one of what I had, I can copy and paste it. However, I want to edit that. I don't want it to be an instance of it. So I need to copy this and I pasted it here. Then what I did is I cleared out the motion that we had before so that they all move evenly again. Let's talk about rotation now. So on these, I have them selected. I'm going to press R on my keyboard for rotation. So it's P for position, R for rotation. I'm going to set a keyframe on each of these at the start for rotation. If I wanted it to move, so all of them are still going to move because the position is still changing. But if I want it to rotate, I need to change that angle here. So I'm going to move over to 12 frames. And I want this blue one to rotate 90 degrees. I want this pink one to rotate one full cycle. So I'm going to type 360, or I could type 1 right here. And then this top one, let's have that one rotate 3 times. So it's going to create do 3 full loops as it passes. So we can hit spacebar, and you can see how that angle is changing. Somebody brought up a really good question. If you're taking a look at these numbers here, as I move this time slider, those are changing as I go, because it's giving us what the state of this is at this time frame. So if I needed to change it, if I wanted at this moment to be a lot higher, I could change that. All right, let's take a look at the graph editor for this. Here we have the same thing before. I'm going to hide the green and the pink one. I just want to look at the blue one for right now. So I'm going to click on rotation, and now I can see it on the graph editor. What it's saying is it's got no rotation and it's going to 90 degrees of rotation. Let's compare that to the rotation of the green square. It's going from no rotation to over 1,000 degrees of rotation. and that's because it's rotating 3 times. 360 times 3 is, I think it's a 120 or something. 1,200, something like that. I don't do math, it's fine. But take a look at that angle. They're a lot different, and if I have them both on next to each other, that's how you're reading it. So this time slider still hasn't changed. This is just how much it's changing over the time. That's also called the delta sometimes. We can adjust how it rotates as well here. So if I turn this shape back on, let's say we wanted to move it up some and say it's rotating even more. Now it's rotating a lot more than what it was at 90 degrees, but it's less precise. You can also leave the graph editor, go over to the frame where we want to change it, and you can click and hold on top of it to change how far you want it to rotate. So maybe you don't have a specific angle in mind, you just want to choose how far it's rotating, right? Okay, let's clear out the rotation. I don't want those to rotate anymore. I'm going to select all of these, and I'm going to right click and say pre-compose. And it's going to come up with this pre-composition dialog box. I'm going to call that no position, no graph editor, just to be clear. So I can copy that copy. So I'm going to select over them, Control C to copy, C as in copy, and then back over here in our main composition, I'm going to paste it. So now I can see all of them. Alright, so I already looked at position, I've already looked at rotation. Next, let's do scale. I'm going to press S on my keyboard for scale, so that I'm only seeing that. I don't need to have all of the other stuff on there. And let's hit a stopwatch for all of those at the start, and we'll go to frame 12. Oh. And let's make some changes. So I'm going to hit this diamond here to put down a keyframe. I haven't changed anything yet on any of these, but I don't want to change them all at the same time. So this is just saying that at this point, we're going to be doing something with them. So let's start with the green square. Right now it's at 40.5 degrees. We can scale that upwards. We can make it 100. Let's do the pink one. We'll make that even smaller. Let's make it 10%, not degrees, sorry. And then for the blue square, I'm not going to do anything. We'll leave it as it is. I'm going to switch those. Let's not. I'm going to restack the layers. That way we can see the pink one on top of the green one. But remember, they're flipped around here. So here you can see as it travels across, the pink one is shrinking. And it looks like I accidentally set this keyframe here. So I'm going to switch it back to 40.5. That way it matches the rest of them. Oh. There we go. So now the green one's getting bigger and the pink one's getting smaller as it approaches this keyframe. You can ease these as well. So we can select all of them, and you can press F9 on your keyboard. It wasn't working on the Mac for me very well, but if it's not working, you can right click, say keyframe assist, and choose easy ease. So you can see that they all turned into little hourglasses instead of diamonds. And that is going to change that easing that we did before, the same way that we did with the position. So let's take a look at this pink square. All right, so here it's not changing a whole lot right now. It's going still between just 1%. So let's click on this fit to selection view so I can see it better. So you can see that there is a change happening. If I made this, and it's going from large to small, it's going slowly, and then it's going to quickly get bigger, and then it's going to get bigger at a slower rate. So this is all about acceleration. Let's emphasize that by pulling these handles closer to each other. And let's hide these. Oops. There we go. Did you see how it's starting out almost the same size as it was, then quickly getting smaller, and then it's about the same size towards the last half of that. And that matches what we did with our acceleration curve. Let's change that up. Here in the middle, about there, I'm going to add a diamond. So that's saying that this point is going to always be right here where I put it. Now I can change these handles and adjust how it's going to move about this. So what should happen is it's going to start small. It's going to start at about 40%. Then it's going to get a little bit smaller. Then it's going to get a little bit bigger again, and then it's going to go quickly back to really small. Do you see? Let's change that around a little. What I'd like you to do is pause the video here and say out loud or think to yourself what this is going to do. What you should have is it's going to start out at its normal size. It's going to quickly get smaller. Then it's going to quickly get bigger. Not quite as big as it was before. And then it's going to quickly get small. Okay. I think that's a really good example of scale and using the graph editor for that. I'm going to collapse these, right click, pre-compose, scale. I'm going to copy these old ones, copy, and that's that position, no motion. And let's talk about transparency really quick. I'm going to push T for transparency or opacity, that's how I always say it. At the start, I'm going to hit the stopwatch. We really only need the pink one for this, so I'm going to hide the green and blue. Alright, so I have my stopwatch on for the pink one. And right now it's at 100%. Let's scale that all the way down to 0. Let's go to frame 12, and let's scale that all the way up to 100. Just like you'd expect, it's going to constantly get brighter, or more visible, more opaque. We can ease that as well. I'm going to select both of those keyframes, right click, keyframe assistant, and easy ease. You should know what's going to happen now, but go ahead and pause it, tell me what you think it's going to be, and then unpause. What you should have said, I hope, is it's going to start out invisible, stay invisible kind of slowly, more quickly speed up to getting more visible, and then it should reach about the most visibility it's going to be and stay there, just like we've. This isn't affecting position, it should only be affecting the opacity. So let's mess with it. Here, maybe we'll have it really quickly jump to being very opaque. So what should happen is it starts at 0, almost suddenly get about 90% of the way there, and then it should stay for almost the rest of the animation. You see it basically blinks right on. Let's get rid of those. I just want the opacity. I'm going to rename it opacity. Let's go back to that position. I'm going to press, actually I'm going to double click it to open up the composition. And this is what we had before. Okay. I want to adjust what I had before. Let's mess with this blue one. Remember, this was a constant right before. So let's go to the graph editor. I'm going to click on both of my position scales, and I'm going to set it so that I can fit it into the window. Remember, it's at that stable constant motion. I want to change that. I just want the X position for this. I want to change it to easy ease. And then I want to do what I did with the opacity just now. I'm going to grab this handle, move it straight up, move this all the way over. All right. Give me a guess on what you think this is going to do. What you should have said, hopefully, is that it's going to stay in its same spot. It's going to slowly leave that spot, and then it's going to quickly move the rest of the way. Ready? Oh, sorry. It should quickly, that's all that's happening. It should just quickly move to that spot. Let's adjust that curve. Let's move it way this way. We'll rotate this down. So now you can see these little dots in the motion path. It should slowly leave and then quickly, almost suddenly appear at the end. And you can see, once it's at frame 12, everything's where it should be. Everything's ending up in that same position. We're just changing the way that it gets there. Okay, so that's a good example of the graph editor and some of these tools. Let's go over what we talked about again. I'm going to click on this pink square, for example. So we talked about the move tool. That's going to be V on your keyboard. The hand tool, that's probably going to be spacebar more than H, but you can also click on H. Zoom, you can hold Control or Command and use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. Rotation, that's going to be W. So we'll click on that pink square up here. Let's hide these position ones. And you can use that W key to rotate things around. Y on your keyboard is going to be the pin behind. That's going to affect your anchor point. Remember, if you hold Control or Command, that's going to let you snap it to the middle. We have the shape tool here. And then let's talk about some of those key commands down at the bottom. If I press P on my keyboard, that's going to pull up the position. If I press it again, it's going to hide it. If I press S, that's going to pull up my scale tool. S again, and that will collapse it. R for rotation. R again to collapse it. And T for transparency or opacity. T to collapse it. If I press U on my keyboard, it's going to pull up anything that currently has a keyframe. So anything that I've clicked on over here, it's going to pull up only things with stopwatches. If I just click the drop-down arrow, you can see all of that with this transform drop-down. So you can see everything here, even if it doesn't have a stopwatch turned on. All right, let's add some text. This up here is going to be my type tool. I'm going to drag out a text box, and I'm just going to type my name. It starts out default. Let's select it and make some changes over here in text. Let's go for this font, and we'll make it a lot bigger. I want to make it centered. I can change the color here. Maybe I want it to be kind of aqua. That seems good. I can use the pan behind tool to change the anchor point so that this is centered as well. Now if I tried to rotate it, I'll click W on my keyboard to get the rotation tool. It's rotating about that center point. And I can animate this exactly the same way I animated everything else. So let's start at the beginning. And let's do kind of a fun animation. I'm going to start this off screen. I can say center the composition with my line tool. I'm going to press P on my keyboard to pull up position. So I'm going to start it off screen. And then at 12 frames, I want it to be in the center of my composition. And you can see it did that automatically. If I play that back, oh, here we go. There we go. If I play that back, it's going to move consistently up to the center. It's fine, it's pretty slow. Maybe we want to make it a little bit faster, so we can move it up to maybe 16 frames. So now it'll move faster, but still consistently. It's kind of boring. Let's grab these and press F9 on the keyboard, or right click and say Keep Frame Assistant Easy Ease. And now that should be a little bit more interesting. But let's add even more exaggeration to that position. And we can see this green tab now is the motion since we're only affecting the Y position. I need to separate my dimensions to be able to affect that. It's moving constant right now. What I want to do is, here we go, is select both of these frames. And I want to add that easing. And let's exaggerate it. So I want it to be pretty sudden. And actually we can have it pop in. Let's try that. And that might be a little too much. Let's lessen this a bit. Let's reverse it. That looks pretty smooth. That looks a lot more interesting. Okay, let's add something else to it. Let's add some transparency. So I'll press T for transparency and turn on my opacity. And it set a timer or a keyframe where I was. That's not really where I want it to be. Let's have it kind of fade in from here. So I'm going to set it to 0 at the start. At 10 frames, it should be completely opaque, but I want it to hold that for just a little bit longer. Now when I hit space, it should fade in. That looks pretty nice. If I press U on my keyboard, I should see all of my positions. If I right click, I can undo that separate dimensions. And we could also do a rotation if we wanted to. Let's try doing that. We'll do R for rotation. And set another keyframe so that it's at 0, 0. And then at the start, let's have it flipped. So what we could do, I'm going to show you on this one and then I'll switch them around. We'll have it at 180 degrees. 180, so that it's upside down. And I'm going to flip those keyframes around. So I'm going to drag this one here and the other one here. There we go. I think that that's a little bit much, but let's move that here instead. I don't really love how that looks. Maybe on a shape, but not on a word. I'm going to turn that off. So now there's no keyframes, but my rotation is still set to that first keyframe. So let's go back and set it to 0. It hasn't put a keyframe down because I'm not using the stopwatch. It's just changing the rotation. Okay, so let's try playing those together. It's okay. Okay, let's start a new composition. I'm gonna save what I have right now. Oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot to show you a couple things that we need to add in. So here in this project section over on the left, I want to add my files for the audio and for an image. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to say import file, and it's going to pull up my file explorer. It'll be your Finder if you're on a Mac. And I can grab, let's use this pink bird Illustrator file, and I can say, oh, before I click import, it's very important you want to change this where it says footage to composition retain layer sizes. And now I can click import. Now I have this pink bird composition here on the left. I can drag that into my layer stack. And it's not going to do anything because I don't have any animation applied to it, but I can add any animation I want to it. So maybe we want R for rotation, and we want it to rotate around twice. There we go. You might see that green bar here. This is your render bar. It's telling you if it's still buffering or not. So if there's a section that's not green there, that's still buffering, right? Okay, and then lastly, let's add in that audio. So I'm going to say import file. And now I have to find where I put my audio. Here's one. I'm just going to click import just as it is, and I can drag and drop that into my layer stack. If I want to mute that, I can click this button and now it won't play it out loud. It's kind of like the eyeball, but for sound. So now we could play it all together. It's only going to play the first beat and I have my audio turned off, so let's do that. Let's try again. If you drop this down, you can see the waveform as well. That's sometimes useful if you wanted to have things hit on a particular accent, but it's not always necessary. Okay. I think that covered a lot. I'm gonna upload this video and then I'm gonna do a separate video of me making kind of that kaleidoscope project with you guys. Okay, so hopefully you watched the navigation video at this point. Let's put it all together now. Let's use it and make something cool. I'm gonna add a new composition. And here I'm gonna call it first name, last name, week 2, Kaleidoscope animation. This time for real. Make sure you still have these default settings, 5 seconds, HD 1920 by 1080, 24 frames per second. I'm going to start with a black background color and click OK. Okay, so I want to create something like the Spies in Disguise animation that I showed you guys in class. So I'm going to mute it, but I want to show that to you guys. I also have an example in the week 2 folder called Kaleidoscope Animation. I want to show you a little bit of how I put that together. Let me just get through the ad. Okay. So let's take a look at what's happening in here. Here we have some of these elements are just rotating out to the side, right? And it feels like there's a lot happening, but really, if you're looking at these individual pieces, they're just doing a little bit of position change, maybe a little bit of rotation, and don't worry about the birds flapping their wings at the moment. Let's look at this part. Here, we have a character animating in from the bottom. So now you should feel pretty comfortable with using position, and that's going to be that same exact thing. You see them bounce right there. So they move down and then back up. Not a whole lot happening. Let's look at this animation. If you're looking right here, you have a lot of stuff brewing in the center, right? And now they're just growing in scale, but there's so much stuff that it looks like a lot of complexity happening. So we have these cat heads moving out to the side and growing. So that's a position and scale. We have these circles, they're going to be moving in a circle. And these cat heads, they're all moving out from the center too. Some things are rotating and growing, and it's just a lot of that. If you saw just now, I saw this transparency here, where this bird went from no opacity to very visible. Here we have these shapes coming from the center and moving outwards. So it's a lot of that. Here we have some just position, some rotation. That was a transparency change between these two. And it just looks super cool, super fun. I'd love to show you how to make something like that. So let's get started. I'm going to start with a square, and I want to choose my background color. I'm going to choose a blue, kind of a bright blue, and I want to show you in Moodle, if you go up to tools to get you, into resources, here in coolers, I'm going to click on that and click on this free color palette generator. And let's get some fun color palettes going. You can either start the generator and press spacebar to change that and find a cool color palette. This one looks really nice, for example. Or you can go to Explore Trending Palettes. And it has a lot of great ones just to start you off. So here's a really nice bright one that would look great on a blue or on a black background. This is another really good one. Here's another really fun one. I think these bright colors are going to look really great on this dark screen, so I'm going to click on this one. Open the color palette. I'm going to try to use these colors as I go. So let's start out. I'm going to copy, when I click, it'll copy this hex code. I'm going to copy that hex code from the color palette. And I'm going to click on my fill and paste that hex code into here. Now I can drag out my rectangle. Actually, in fact, let's do a circle. I'm going to drag out my circle. I'm going to hold control as I do it. And I'm about going to line it to here. Down here in the fill color, let's change that from a solid to a radial gradient. I'm going to change the fill color. It has my old one from before. I'm going to paste my new color palette. And what I can do is adjust that transparency. So if you're looking here, you can see that this is where it's completely see-through and this is where it's completely opaque. I want to move that over. It's affecting it a little bit. It might be a scale thing. So let's stick with what we have. There we go. So this is going to be my gradient background. And you can see that it's got this crisp edge here. I don't really want that, so I'm going to make this bigger than my canvas so that it's completely inside of it. There we go. That looks pretty good to me. Let's make sure that it is centered to my composition. And part of that is making sure that that anchor point is where it should be. I think it was in the start, but let's just double check it. There we go. Now there's a lot going on here. I don't want to see all of that. That's too much for my brain. I don't like to see all that. I just want it to start like this, and let's do a quick animation. I'm going to hit S for scale. I'm going to go all the way to the end. Actually, let's go halfway. And I'm going to turn on my scale so that it's as big as it is now. Then at the start, I want to shrink it down so that it's coming from nothing almost. Let's just set these to 0. So now when I play it, it grows, it gets bigger. That looks nice. I'm going to select both of these, right click, and choose Easy Ease. Then I'm going to go to the graph editor, and let's click on scale. And I want both of these to move evenly, and they should be moving evenly because they're linked with this chain. So what I want to do is select these top ones, drag both of these handles to the left, move over, select both of these, move both of these handles to the right. That way it'll exaggerate how quickly it turns into this big blue globe almost. I'm going to click on this, press enter or return, and name that gradient. I don't want to click on this too much and accidentally affect it, so I'm going to click on this lock icon so I don't do anything to it on accident. Alright, let's add a shape for us to animate. Okay, so I'm going to copy another one of my colors from my color palette. I'm going to grab a yellow and let's make some squares. So instead of this fill color, we'll need to change that so that it's a solid fill. So I'm going to click on the text and choose solid color instead. And now I can change the fill color by pasting in my hexadecimal code. What I want to do is just add in a square. I'm going to hold shift so that it's a perfect square. And I need to move my anchor point. This is not my anchor point, so I'm going to move, click off of it and click back on so that I can see the anchor point. I'm going to hold Control or Command if you're on a Mac to snap it to the center, and now I can go back to the Move tool. Here in the Alignment tab, I'm going to center this. And I want to make a lot of these because what I want these to do is rotate around. So what I'm going to do is go into the shape layer. First I'll name it yellow square. And I'm going to copy, Control C for copy, Control V for violin, V for paste. I'm going to paste 9 of these. So I have all 9. I'm going to press enter and add 1 to the end. Okay, so now I have this gradient layer, but I'm not really using it. I don't really need to see it. I'm going to click on this little kind of tulip shape. I call it a shy guy. And now he's kind of hiding. If I click on this guy looking over a wall over here, it's going to shy away anything that I've hidden. That way I don't have to worry about having that layer on here. I can just focus on my yellow squares. Okay, so now I have 9 yellow squares. I want to press R for rotation. And I want these all to be 360 degrees, but each divided by 9. What I can do with all of these selected is I could do 360 divided by 9, and it'll do some math, and I'll come up with 40 for 9. So I could go through and say 40, 80, 160, 200, but I don't necessarily want to do that. So I'm going to use this parenting tool instead. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that. And I'm going to use the spiral. We'll talk about it a lot more in class later, but this is a really handy way to make these be affected by the next one. Okay, So right now they should all be linked to the one above it. I'm going to grab all of these and let me show you what parenting does before we go too far. So let's make a pink circle over here. Move the anchor point for the circle where it belongs. And let's make a blue star also. Okay, so now we have those two shapes. I'm going to hide all of these for a second. I don't want to see those yellow squares up here. I just want to mess with this for right now. I'm going to click and drag everything so I don't see it actually. And now I can hide out just the layers that I have here. So right now I have a pink circle and I have a blue star. If I parent this pink circle to this blue star, when I move the blue star around, oops, I need to, there we go. When I move this blue star around, because the pink one is parented to the star, it has to move with it. If I rotate it, it has to rotate with it, and look, it's rotating around its own axis point. I can rotate the circle as well, but it's not affecting this star because it's a child of this blue star. This star is the parent to this pink circle. I can move the pink circle around, and wherever I move that to, it still has to work with the blue star. So that's a quick run through of parenting. We'll get way more into that later. I don't want to spend too much time on it. Okay, so back to our yellow squares. Since I've parented everything, each one is going to rotate the next one just that little bit more. So now when I say R for rotation and say 360 divided by 9, it's going to put 40 in, but 40 displayed around all of these. So now they're not rotated the same direction as each other, but that little extra bit, it's basically 40 plus 40. 40 plus 40 plus 40. That's just a nice little way to quickly get that rotation. I'm going to say select all of these and choose none at the top for parenting. That way I don't have to mess with that anymore. And I'm going to do scale instead. And I'm going to click my stopwatch at 0. So now they should all start here at 100. I want them to start small though, so I'm going to set it to 0. And they're all going to set to 0. And then here I'm going to, let's go up to this point. And let's see how it looks when we make our scale bigger. Okay, that's fine. But I think what I want it to do instead is get maybe up to 25. No, that's too small. Maybe up to 100, like we had it. But I want them to move away from that starting spot. Now there's a tool that we haven't talked about yet, and that is the anchor point tool. We've used the anchor point, that's what it's rotating about. But let's see how it looks when we change that anchor point for everything. So I'm pushing U so that I can see everything that I've affected so far. I'm going to switch it just to A so I can just see the anchor points. Yeah. And here I'm going to expand that anchor point so it all moves outward like this. So let's play that back. Wow. Let's select everything, push R for rotation, move to 0, 0 on our keyframe, and you can double check that up here. And let's turn on rotation for everything. Then let's go to this edge, and let's affect these rotations. So you can see how they're all spinning about each other now. And they're all moving relative to each other because I'm dragging it from here. If I just type in a number, let's say it's 180, all of them will go back to 180 degrees. They won't stay in their nice little circle. So we need to move it by scaling this over here. What I'm going to do is change this front number. I'm going to set it to just +1 on top, and that should affect everything. Let's play it back. There we go. So now they're all spinning out and around. I think that looks pretty nice, but we can add some easing. So let's grab everything. I'm going to do right click, keyframe assistant, and I'm going to say easy ease. Let's go to these easing, and let's set it so I can see everything. Let's grab everything on the right, drag that over. Try to get a straight line. That's pretty close. Drag over and grab everything over here. Kind of exaggerate that rotation speed. And then we can do scale and do the same process. Grab everything over here. Oops, we forgot to turn on easing, so I'll grab everything on the canvas and set it to easy ease. And then I can exaggerate that by dragging that over. And then let's do A for anchor point and do that too. I'm going to go to the graph editor. I haven't turned on easing. But I want to grab everything, ease that, and now that looks like it's all I'm going to be able to do. That should be good though. Alright, let's watch back our animation at this point. That was pretty fun. Comes at you really fast, slows down. I think on the scale I could change that instead, so I'm going to press S on my keyboard to change the scale. And let's grab everything in here. We'll just do this. And click on the graph editor. Let's rearrange it so I can see everything. And what I want it to do is get a little bit slower here. I like how quickly it comes out. Oops. I don't necessarily want to affect that too much, but I do want to slow that down towards the end. So let's play it back. Way better. Okay. I really like how all of that looks. I'm going to press U on my keyboard and U again so I can hide everything. And I'm going to zoom back over. I can use Alt or Command, Alt to zoom in and out. It's Option, on a Mac. And I can see if there's any spots where my keyframes are a little bit off. I think it's fine the way that it is, but that's a good way to check. It looks like it's just rotating extra here, so let's go ahead and grab all of these and move those rotation icons over so that they're all on 2 frames or 2 seconds. Okay, I'm going to Control A or Command A to select everything and press U to hide everything. Then I'm going to grab all of these, right click, and say pre-compose. We'll call it yellow squares. So now I have this yellow squares composition. It's going to play on its own. Whoa, something did not get selected. Let's try that again. Let's make this a little bigger so I make sure I grab everything. Collapse them, right click, and pre-compose. Yellow squares. So now I have this yellow squares layer. Everything is still animating the way that it should, exactly the way we set it up. However, if I press U on my keyboard, P on my keyboard, it's not going to be affecting any of those individual squares. I need to double click it if I want to do that. I don't need to at the moment. I'm going to click on this box over here and change it to yellow so it's a different color on the layer. And I'm going to copy this composition, Control C, and paste it. So what that should do is just a complete duplicate. But since I have all of these individually, I can offset those by dragging this section to the right a little. And so now I can copy and paste a lot of those to get several of these happening all at the same time. So let's watch. Wow! What I want to do is select all of these, press T on my keyboard for opacity, and let's start each of these at 0. And then about here, let's have them go to 100. I can move that over a little. Wow. And so now we have something that's pretty in your face, just like we had from the Spies in the Skies video. Let's grab all of these, press U to minimize them. I'm going to right click on them all and say pre-compose, and then I'll say yellow squares offset. So if I unhide my layers, I have my gradient of my yellow squares offset, and inside that I have the precompositions for the individual yellow squares. Okay, so let's add something to that. Let's add some orange circles, I would say. So I'm gonna go back to my color palette, click on one of these oranges maybe, and let's add, did I say circles or stars? I don't remember. Let's do a circle. I'm going to go to fill. I'm going to Control V to paste that orange. And I'm going to draw in, holding Shift and Control, a circle. I want it to be pretty small. I'm going to move it to the center. Oh, we need to do the pan behind tool, the anchor point tool, and make sure that that is centered. Go back to the move tool, and now I can center that on the composition. All right. I'm gonna hide these guys, so I don't need to see either of these right now. I'm gonna shy them away. I'm gonna press enter, orange, circle. I'm gonna actually call that orange circle 1. And I'm gonna let's make 12 of these. Control C, paste, 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 paste. So now I have all 12 of these. Let's start with pressing scale, and we'll start it at 0. I'm gonna turn on my stopwatch. Then when it gets out really big, we'll maybe start it at 3 frames. So I'm gonna move all of these scale keyframes over to 2 frames. That's about when all of these squares are still in frame. And then we're gonna start having, over the next 2 seconds, these orange circles coming out and rotating. So let's scale these up. We'll set it to 100. And we'll do that for all of them. 100. All right, now not a whole lot is happening because they're right there in the center. So let's make sure that they all are moving out into different positions. So I'm going to grab all of these, press P for position. And remember, we're at 2 frames now. So I'm going to move this closer so I'm not repeating that part. And let's turn on my position stopwatch. And each of these at 4, I want them to go outwards. It might be easier to use the anchor point tool. Let's try that first. It would be, but we need to make sure that they are rotated around like how we did with the squares. Let's try something else instead. Let's go anchor point out to here maybe. Let's go back to the scale and make it a little bit smaller. I like it at 100. Anchor point. I want it to be about at the edge of the canvas. And then I want to make sure that each of these are rotating around. So I'm going to press R on my keyboard for rotation. And let's go to the start and rotate these around. It shouldn't have a rotation at the moment, but as it gets to here, let's have it kind of spiral out. So what we can do is we'll start with 40, 80, 60, 120, 160. We can go on and on and on, or we can parent all of these across. Make sure you're grabbing the top spiral, not the bottom spiral. Parent these all up across each other. Select all of them and do scale 360 divided by 12. So now we have a row of our little circles, and I don't need that rotation to start from here, I don't think. If I do, I get this cool spiral. I think that looks pretty neat. Let's do that. And let's make sure that the scale it might be the anchor point actually. Yeah, gets out of frame. So let's test that out. That's pretty cool. Okay, so let's use that. And I'm going to minimize this, select everything, right click, pre-compose, orange circles. And I want to do the same thing that we did before. I'm going to click this, choose orange so that I can see a difference between that. So now I have my yellow, orange, and that blue gradient that we started with. And I want to copy and paste this orange circle spiral. In fact, let's undo really quick and press U to see everything. Let's grab all of these keyframes, and I want to move them over just a little bit more so that something's happening here so that they're starting to overlap. Okay, press U to hide all that, right click, pre-compose, orange circles. I'll click this orange and I'll unhide everything so I can see what I'm doing. So right now I just have that one orange circle shape happening. Let's copy that, copy, and paste. And what should happen is I want to offset it just a little bit. Maybe a little more than that. Then I can copy and paste that, and copy and paste that. Let's see how that looks. That's okay. I think what we should do is change the rotation on all of these. So I'm going to press R for rotation, and I want this one to start at 0. I'll have this one starting at 45, then 90, and then 270, I think is next. 90 plus 45, and 35. Okay, so let's see how that affects it. Kinda. That's not really what I want then. Let's see what the situation is here. I think I need these to be a little closer together, first of all. That way we get several going at one time. So you can see that kind of overlapping there. And here's where I want to change that distance. And I'm holding Shift to click multiple of these. Shift or Command, either one. Shift or Control, either one. And that way I can move multiple at the same time. This dot here is working with this one, so that's my starting point. Okay, let's try that. That looks pretty good. I can double click on this orange circle's rotation, and whatever I do here is going to impact all of these. So I'm going to go back to this tab, and let's see if I can affect this circle here first. So that looks like number 12. I'm going to click all of them, press U, and let's take a look at how the anchor point is changing them. So let's do A for anchor point. Grab all of these, and we'll do easy ease. Now let's go to the graph editor. I'm going to click this to see all of it at once. And we have easy ease already. And maybe what we need to do is squish all of these in a little bit. What if instead we do right click, keyframe assistant, and ease out? So that way it leaves the station slow and quickly arrives at its stopping point. Let's right click and we'll try the other version, ease in. So that leaves the station fast and slows down towards the end. I like the look of that. Let's see how it looks all together here. That looks pretty interesting. What I might do is add a couple more of these yellow squares for the rotation. Copy and paste that. Close that. Close this. grab all of these. Let's see how that goes. Let's move that out just a bit. Okay. That's off to a pretty good start. I think the next thing is when it gets to the point where there's a gap here, I need something else to come out of it. So let's go back into here. I'm going to pre-compose all of these orange circles. Orange circle, offset. Change it to orange, that way it's easy to see on my timeline. And let's add something new. I'm going to add in this point where this dot starts happening, this opening at 2 frames, it looks like, or 2 seconds. Let's grab another color from over here. I'm going to grab this light blue. Oh boy. There we go. Okay, I'll figure that other stuff out in a minute. Okay, so what I want to do is at 2 frames, I want to grab a circle. I'm going to hide these so I'm not messing with them. I'm going to lock them so I'm not messing with them. I'm going to drag out my circle, Control and Shift. And I'm going to start it let's make it pretty big so I can start it pretty small easily. So I want it to take over the whole shape. I'm going to change the fill color, Control V to paste. And let's call this blue circle. Okay, let's start with the scale. Actually, sorry, let's start with good habits. So we're going to use our pan behind tool, click off and back on, and make sure this is set to the center. Then I'm going to move using the move tool, make sure that is aligned to the center of the composition. And let's start with the scale. So here at the start, I want this to be 0. At 2 seconds, I think I don't want anything to change until about here, so let's turn these eyeballs back on. I don't want anything coming out of this at this moment. I want here to be where something starts. So I'm going to drag that 0, 0 scale to this point. And then, let's see. At this point, when those orange circles are off the screen, let's make sure this is at 100. So it's going to zoom out like this. We can rearrange that so that the orange circles are coming out on top of it. And then let's use this scaling keyframe assistant, easy ease. Let's see how that looks for right now. Lots happening, but I think it's looking good. And then let's add a gradient on top of that. So I'm going to do Control C, Control V. And if I press U, it should have the exact same keyframes. So what I need to do is change it to be a radial gradient. And click OK. I want to change the color of that. So let's make it maybe a bit more blue. I can use my this. And let's make sure there we go. And then let me switch these around. so that the darkest area is around the edges, right? So I'm gonna press U to collapse a lot of that, U to collapse a lot of this, and let's see how that's looking. Okay, solid. Let's press U to see everything that's changed so far. I'm gonna grab these used frames and open up my graph editor. I want this to come at you pretty suddenly, so I'm gonna rotate this around, and I don't want it to be so sudden that it's almost no frames in between, so let's test that out. Too fast, didn't like that. Try it again. That's better. We could do better than that though, I think. Let's exaggerate it. See how that looks. I like that. And then when it gets to that point, so let's zoom out on this so we can see everything. So at about 4 seconds, let's start it at 3.5. I want to add in some text. I'm going to lock these and hide them. Hide those, hide that. And let's add a text layer. Let's stretch that. Move that center point. Well, let's affect the text first, I guess. There we go. And what should we call this? Kaleidoscope. Let's change the fill color to white. And let's make sure that frame has enough room for this whole word. Sure. Just do it, even 400, make it easy. Okay, I'm gonna move that pretty much to the center so I can see it, and then I'll make sure that my anchor point is centered. And we can center that as well. And now I can shrink it by holding Shift. All right. So let's have the kaleidoscope word zoom in and out too. And in fact, let's try just making it all caps. And centered. Okay, so I want this to not come out to be this big until 412. So I'm going to press scale, hit scale, and now this scale that it is, oops, let's make sure my anchor point's where it's supposed to be. There we go. Now the scale is going to be at 412. So at this time, this is what it's going to say. But here, I don't want this to be visible, so we need the scale to be 0. And I want that to pop in really similar to the circle in the background. So I'm going to exaggerate this, exaggerate this. All right, let's play it. That's not what I want. Let's try again. So I think I want this to be this direction instead. Yeah, it's almost coming out at you. And when we're at that size, maybe I want it to be a little bit less sudden. Okay. That looks good to me. Now we have our text, our shapes, we've got a lot of stuff happening. Let's add in those image and music files. Okay, so I have my file explorer here, and I want to grab this orange dragon illustrator file. So I'm going to drag and drop that into here. It's going to pull up a dialog box that says, do you want to import as footage or composition? I want composition. And I want to make sure this has layer size. So I'll click OK. So now I have this little orange origami dragon. I want to have 2 of those. And here's what I want to do. I'll right click on the top one, say transform, and flip horizontal. So I have them both facing different directions. And let's have, when we get to here, I want this one to start out here and this one to start out on the top. I'm going to click on both of these, click P on my keyboard, and turn on position. So here at this, let's put it at 3 seconds, they are off the screen. At 5 seconds, let's put the dragons below the text. At 5 seconds, let's copy this position, go to this position, and push paste. Oh, sorry, that's not quite what I want. Let's go. I just want to copy this value. Copy. At 5 seconds, let's say paste. Oops, wrong value. One more try. Copy. Paste. There we go. So now it's going straight down. And let's do that with the other. So we have negative 356. We'll copy that. Go here and paste it. So now what should happen is they should kind of crisscross. That looks okay. We just need to change the graph editor again. Scale those down. And let's do one at a time so it's not confusing. Let's grab just this one. And let's grab, grab just this one. And ease that back and forth. Alright, let's test that out again. It's okay. That one didn't get eased. There we go. They're not moving quickly enough for me, so I want to move that over maybe to 4 seconds instead. Whoa, too fast. Let's try again. Sure. Okay, that's all right. Let's exaggerate this easing. I have to separate my dimensions to do that. Let's exaggerate this again. And let's move this so that my handle is at 20 frames, and we'll remember that for the other dragon. Let's move this so that the handle is at 20 frames. Let's do the same thing for this position. We're going to separate the dimensions. I just want the green position. And let's ease those. And adjust the handle so that that is at 20 frames. Okay, let's see how that all looks together. I like that. I like that. I'm going to copy this yellow offset squares, Control C. And I want to paste that below the kaleidoscope. And I want to move this whole thing over so it repeats that process. That's a little late. Let's move it over to 2. Too early. Let's move it to 3. Goldilocks. I'm gonna shrink this. No, I'm not. Let's do one more shape. We'll just make another one. Let's do a star tool. And I'm gonna drag out my shape. Hold shift while I do and control. And control's gonna let me change the those inner corners. But let's do, oh sorry, very important. We need to not have a layer selected while we draw out our shapes. Let's do that again. Let's change the fill to a solid color. Click OK. And I want to make that solid color this light orange. Maybe I want yellow, I don't know yet. I like the light orange so far. And I am going to change the amount of points on the star to 3 so that it's a triangle actually. Okay, so let's move that anchor point to the center. And I think that looks a little high to me, so I want to move it down just a little bit. Not that far. That looks more centered to the triangle to me at least. I'm going to shrink it down, holding shift. And let's hide all these guys. I'll rename it Orange Triangle. 1. Let's make, we could make like, we'll make 12 of these again. Copy, paste, 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 paste. Let's parent each one above each other. Select all of them, press R, 360 divided by 12. And let's unparent everything, so set it to none. Let's do scale, and let's move that about to here, 3 frames, 3 seconds, we'll hit, oh sorry, 3.12, we'll hit scale, set the scale to 0, and here at 5, let's set the scale to 100. And let's adjust that anchor point as well. So A for anchor point. And click on here. And then at 5 seconds, let's have it go further out. Try that again. There we go. And I think that scale is too large at the end, so let's make it a little bit smaller. Go back to A for anchor point, make that a little bit larger so that they really separate. And what I want to make sure is that they're all fully off the screen. There we go. And let's ease those. select all of these and press F9 on the keyboard. Let's do scale, select everything, F9, P on the keyboard. Oh, we didn't change the position. R, didn't change the rotation, good. So let's just see how all of that looks so far. Pretty decent. I want to make sure that this text is always on top. Let's play that again. All right. I want to adjust that anchor point. Let's see. I can't really adjust this. Yeah, that's kind of its own thing. That's okay. Let's do, I'll make this one pink. Sure. And let's pre-compose these. Orange triangle. Copy and paste that. And let's make sure we can see the whole thing. Move it just a little bit over. And we'll copy paste that. Move it a little over. Copy and paste. Move it over. Copy and paste. Move it over. One more just for good measure. Let's see what we got so far. I like that so far. I'm going to pre-compose this. Orange triangle offset. I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to add another circle for a gradient. Oops, it's trying to mask it. We don't know about masks yet. Let's go off, make sure we're on its own layer. And let's add let's move this below the kaleidoscope layer. Let's make it a fill layer. Change it to a radial gradient. Okay. And let's set up that gradient. I'm gonna paste in my orange. That's kind of pretty actually. Okay, let's try okay. Let's just have that. I'm going to copy these and I'm going to paste them onto here. Control Z. Paste them here. Yeah. Let's make sure that my anchor point is centered on that. Not sure I like that light blue circle at the moment. Let's make sure that our triangles are centered. Okay, let's play all of that together. I don't like this gradient. It doesn't look quite right. I think it's the blue circle though. And something looks off center to me also. Let's isolate that. There we go. Now we can move it, make sure that that is centered. I think that's what it was. And let's unisolate it. Let's try again. Let's change that blue first. I don't like that blue, and I don't think I like these gradients that much. Let's play that from the beginning and see if it looks good. That looks better, honestly. Let's try to make the gradient here. T for transparency. I want it to be 100, and then at this point, 0. F9 to ease it. That looks cool. Okay, let's get rid of this inner blue circle. And then here, let's add this orange gradient back in. Something looks offset about something in here. Whoa. That should be right. Let's try that again. Okay, that's what happened. Maybe that will help. Okay, we'll go for that. Let's do I want to make these a little bit softer because it's really hard to read Kaleidoscope at the moment. So let's make one more orange gradient, copy paste. And I want to change this fill so that it is black. Let's go to transparency. Okay, I'll take it. Let's switch this around so that black is my darker shape. Let's do one more thing. I want this transparency of these yellow squares. I want to get rid of it, I think. So let's go to yellow squares, T for opacity. Oh, turn that all off so that it's all at 100% all the time. So when we go back here, it should start bright, stay bright. I do think a circle coming in here in the back would still be nice, but that's okay. And let's have this orange gradient up here. We'll have both of them. We'll turn on that opacity for both. By this, I want it to be 100%. So here, let's make sure it's at 0, so it kind of fades in. And then for these orange triangles, let's have those also go from 0. And we'll have it just go to 50 so that they're not too bright. Let's try that. Good so far. I don't like this gradient so much. Let's change it to a yellow. See how that looks. Copy it. It looks kind of icky. Let's try. Okay, let's try that. I think we've got it. Let's have it pop in here. That looks nice. Okay. All right, so we have almost everything. Let's just make sure that we import that song. There it is. Import. Drag it on top. And we can play. Solid. We could move these dragons a little bit earlier. Let's move it to 2 frames. To 12. it's okay. I think we covered a lot of different topics and a lot of different ways we can use these tools. If you guys have any questions, if you want me to show you anything, come visit me. Let me know what I can do for you guys, and I will see you in class next week.